This is NHTV2, North Haven Government Television, a service of North Haven Community Television. The following program is brought to you through the support of the Town of North Haven.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the regular meeting of the Town of North Haven's Board of Finance for February 19th, 2025. We're going to have our regular meeting, which we hope will run approximately half an hour, and then we will adjourn the meeting and commence a budget workshop starting at 7 with the registrars, the town clerk and tax collector, and then followed by the police department. So we're going to go right into our regular meeting. We're going to start with the minutes of the last month's meeting on January 15th. Any questions or comments on the minutes, please?
I make a motion to accept.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Just under old business, one or two things, please. We do have listed the email address for this board, which is the Board of Finance at northaven-ct.gov. We did get 2 emails from residents, which were in our regular packets supporting the Board of Education vote. One of our members had a question on the information that Chief Janishevsky gave us last year in support of 2 additional firefighters, which I did obtain. I sent it out to the members. They got it the last day or so. We also had a request for some additional information, which some of it was in front of you on the desk, most notably the grand list. There is some other information I'm going to pass out. It's mostly demographic information on the town of North Haven. If you wouldn't mind passing it down, please. The request, by the way, was addressed to Mr. Frieda, and once again, I'd ask the members to please pass their information requests through to myself as the chair. Mr. Frieda's trying to run a town, and I think for consistency and a few other purposes, we'd like to keep it the way it has been, which is to run your requests through the chair. Oh, I'm sorry. I know I couldn't make the Board of Ed workshop, although I did watch it on tape. There was a number of questions asked, and the Board of Ed did supply answers to those questions, so those are also waiting for you on the table here as well. All right, with that, let's go into our reports, please. We can start with the revenue for the excuse me, the month of January. We did get in our first block of ECS funding at roughly $1.1 million. We got in $968,000 on our supplemental auto. Tax collections seem to be going well. Interest on short-term investments was was 73,000, wrong number, for the month, but we are still considerably ahead for the entire year. We are down a little bit in some areas, notably town clerk fees and fire fees. With that, any comments or questions from the members, please?
We are, in terms of at 93.5% relative to previous years.
I'd have to defer to Ingrid on that.
Yes, I checked on it. We are in track.
On track.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the ECS was our second allocation?
Second payment, yes.
Second payment of the year.
There's 2 25% payments, and the last payment is 50%. We will get that by the end of the year.
But did we find out that we're not going to get 87,000 of this?
What? No.
No, that was right. No, sorry.
No, that's for the following fiscal year.
Oh, for the next year. Okay,
Right.
sorry. Other comments, questions on the revenue side? Why don't we take a look at the town side expenses, please? My only comment here is after 7 months, the report shows 66% expended, but if you make an adjustment for the encumbrances and the bonds, which are front-loaded, and so are a number of other expenses, by the way, we are on track at about 59% expended year-to-date. And
So-
I open it up to any comments or questions.
With respect to the point that you're making about the encumbrances, I agree with you that in a lot of cases, individual departments and individual line items seem a little bit skewed based upon the encumbrances. So has there been a change in the policies regarding the encumbrances, having like a purchase order open for individual departments, or? has
No,
that-
but we are reviewing them every quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So we do see the encumbrances that we show right here are real, for the rest of the year.
Yeah, if I can
Sure.
also interject here.
Sure.
So what Ingrid said, we're reviewing them every quarter. Rich and Ingrid are doing this. We're putting sunsets on the encumbrances. We're not letting them lapse month after month after month without working hard to try to close those out that may have been estimations as to what an encumbrance would be. We're trying to close those out to make it a little bit more pristine on this
Yes.
particular item. So thank you for what you're doing on that, Ingrid. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Comments, questions on the expenditures, please?
The water and fire protection is done in half-year increments, or
What page?
16, 1/6 for the bottom.
2 increments, yes.
2 increments.
We'll get the next one by the end of the year.
Are they going to be 2 even increments?
Most likely, yes. So the water fire protection line is that usage, or what is, or do we release anything? No,
Is that the fire hydrants?
that is for the fire.
Yeah.
Yes.
Ingrid, on page 6, for all practical purposes, we've expended all of our budget on the special audit, so I'm assuming it's done. This is basically the personal property tax audit.
Personal
It's on the top of page 6 there. Top of the page 6.
Yeah, I see.
So
Okay, I have it in a different.
it's 215. Can you just check with Gary maybe for the next meeting, or maybe send an email? I'm just curious if we achieved any revenues from that audit.
Stacy goes.
Stacy, I'm sorry, do you know? No? Okay.
And with respect to the, on page 5 and 6, the special audit, are these numbers kind of fixed, or are they continuing to grow?
We are, with our new auditors, we are doing a lot of different audits, as well as, auditing previous year and new year to make sure everything's okay. So that reflects that. So a lot of consulting,
So we think that this number will continue to grow?
yes.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Mr. Hallian, you usually have something to say.
The finance department is doing a fine job. Most of the staff, there's one guy in the office I'm not sure about, but otherwise, doing a pretty good job. Thanks.
Okay, so why don't we go on to the Board of Ed then? So we got both, I believe, the January and February report, I believe.
Yes, we got this.
We did get our usual cover letter.
Yes.
It talks about both out-of-district and in-district special ed. Although I believe we're waiting for our first payment on the out-of-district, the Board of Ed is signaling that they expect that line item to be over budget by the end of the year. I'm sorry, that's true as well with the in-district.
So one of the things that they point out is that they're expecting by the end of this month to receive a payment for the excess cost payment. And they were informed in January that they will be expecting to receive, looks like $899,251. And they had budgeted for this current fiscal year for excess cost grant of $875,753. So if they in fact get the number that they've been promised, they really will just be short about $27,000. So I would say, all things considered, that's pretty good. The other point that they make is, they say, as a reminder, this budget line, meaning the tuition that they're referring to, line item 5600, was developed net of projected excess cost funding. Now, my recollection was that when they presented this budget to this board last year for the current fiscal year, they presented all special ed costs as gross of excess costs.
They did, and in fact, they reversed it this year, but didn't we go back to them and?
Well, we certainly complained about it. I'm not sure if they changed it.
I thought we changed it with the second referendum, because you're right, they did do it, which was a change. They'd always given it to us net historically.
Yes,
They
absolutely.
did give it to us gross last year. They went back to net this year, but I thought after the first referendum, we got them to change it.
It could be that they changed the numbers, but if you look at the budget that's still online, in their description, it still says gross of projected excess cost funding. So, I can't say that definitively, that the numbers changed, but I know that at least the description that is on our website still says gross. So I think we'd have to follow up with the Board of Ed on that.
Okay.
And with respect to, again, this particular line item, this tuition line item, which I think is on the second page of their January 2025 budget, which is budget number 7 for the 7th month of the year. Again, they're claiming that they're at approximately 75% of the budgeted amount has been expended, and if you fold in encumbrances, they're at about 90%. But if you look at the very first page of their grants,
Hey Nancy, just before you go on, I want to make sure I'm looking at the right one here.
yep,
Oh, you're looking at month 7, I'm looking at month 6, sorry.
Yeah.
You had month 7 there?
sorry, 1.7.
Okay, sorry.
On the second
Yeah.
page, if you go to line 5600.
No, I know where it is, I just
Yeah,
had the
yeah.
wrong month, that's all.
Okay, so if you fold in, the encumbrances, then, they're quite a bit over. But I guess my concern is that if you go to the first page of their grants, the state grant, that is, it says 5,600 tuition, and they have an appropriation of $875,000 sitting there, and they've only used less than 1% of it. So my hope is that they can tap into that money rather than having to transfer money from the budget paid for by the taxpayers.
I could be wrong, but isn't that the same as the $899 he's talking about? They're gonna get $900,000, he said, for the year. That's what the cover letter said, right?
Yes. No, I'm talking about the state grants, not necessarily the excess cost grants. So if you turn to.
No, I see it,
In
yep.
the packet.
I see it, yep.
The very first page is state grants, and it lists several line items, and one of them is tuition.
Yeah, but 5,600, it's the same object number as what he's talking about.
Yes, so the object number that I'm talking about is within the budget. So within our budget, they are overexpended. But they can use their grant funding, not just the money from the town, but their grant funding to also pay for this particular line item, which is technically $1.3 million over if you include the encumbrances.
I guess I'm seeing it as the same item, that the tuition on that grant is the special ed funding that they're signaling not going to get 875, they're signaling they're going to get roughly 900,000. It's the same number, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
That's how I see it.
Right.
Yeah, that's how it's written, 900,000.
Right, so if you add that in, the projected deficit would be 400,000 based on that encumbrance that's listed?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, it's a hard number to ever hit. I wonder how that compares with previous years, but.
Well, we have a budget from the Board of Ed where they've asked, I believe, for a big increase in
Yeah,
special ed.
A big increase.
Right.
Now, I have to be reminded whether they think there's going to be less excess plus money coming in, or just more, they want a bigger cushion for unanticipated students that may enroll.
So am I next year or this?
That's for the
Next
next year. Let's stay with this year first.
Yeah, no, but obviously, this information here gives us an idea of what their needs might be for next year.
Right, but again, this is almost 1.5 million, and it is an encumbrance, right? It's not that what they've
Right.
expended. It's an encumbrance, so we don't
Right.
know that that's a hard number, correct?
But it's there for a reason.
Right.
Further comments on the Board of Ed?
And also with respect to the electricity, again, the same line item that they're saying is anticipating will be over budget this year. If you actually look at that line item, which is the bottom of the very first page of their budget, line item 410A, their year-to-date actual is only at 60%, which is kind of right where we are. Now, there's a pretty big encumbrance here, which will get them up to 100%, but again, I don't know whether that's expected to be even bigger than that. I don't have an understanding as to why they think they're going to be so much more over budget. But what they've spent so far is right on target with 7/12 of the year.
All right, thank you, Nancy.
Sure.
I'll take a motion on the reports, please.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, that concludes our regular business for this evening. We do have some time for public comment. I would just ask the audience to please be respectful of our department heads who are here for the workshop, but we will take comments or questions, please. Sally, please.
Good evening, Sally Blamey, 5 Blossom Drive. Good evening, Mr. Chairman.
Good evening.
How are you? I went to the First Selectman's State of the Town this morning. You saw me there. You gave a great discussion, especially the bright spots and some challenges in economic development. I thought it was a great presentation. 2 things stuck in my head in that presentation. One was useful, and the other was a little shocking. But now that I've gotten, when I walked in today, I was handed the grand list, which I understand is tentative, but I hadn't seen that document when you spoke this morning. And you did speak a lot about the challenges of this budget with the reval, and how the purpose in a perfect world, the purpose is a redistribution of the tax burden. That is the standard justification of revals over the decades. And I noticed there the percentage increase of the gross went up significantly for residential. Last year it was 52.2, and this year it's over 56.6, I think.
56.6, yeah.
Yeah, so the redistribution is going a little bit more on the backs of the taxpayers.
As it is in every city and town in
Yeah.
Connecticut that's going through reval.
Yeah.
The home prices have exploded in
Right.
North Haven, everywhere else.
Right, I understand that. And you had said, the thing that I found useful, because obviously, as you pointed out, there's a lot of analysis and evaluation that has to go into the budget formulation process in a reval year, because it is tricky, and it does not impact everybody in the same way.
Right.
Because some people's assessments go up a smaller percentage, some go up a larger percentage, and it just makes it difficult. But you did say, and the grand list document that I was handed tonight says residential is about 38% increase. So that was the useful thing you said. The thing that surprised me is you did give, and I will make it very clear, you gave an estimate. You know, our current mill rate is 34.64. You gave an estimate, and I stress it was an estimate, of the mill rate going down 6 mills.
5 to 6 mills.
5 to
that's an
6
estimate,
mills. Okay. And that would end up being a modest tax increase. Well, I used the 6 because I only heard 6, but I'll give you the 5 to 6. I was a little surprised by that because we haven't finished our workshops yet, so it seemed, but I know you're just trying to give a sense that it's going to go down, but the amount, the fact that you gave an amount and you mentioned a modest tax increase, I looked at my own property, which is a little bit less than average because it's only 1,300 square feet. And my assessment only went up 32%. If it goes down 6 mills, my taxes are going to go up, hold on a second. Mine will go up $522, which I don't consider modest. Last year, again, because my house is less than average, it only went up $326. The average increase was $440 or $420. 2 years ago, only $318. If the mill rate only goes down 6 mills, my taxes are going to go up $422. But I just want to talk about the assessment that we used for the past few years. Whenever we were at the annual budget town meeting, and you were trying to appropriately so tell the folks the tax obligation impact of a proposed budget, especially if it had a tax increase, we were using 210 as the average.
Yeah, and I mentioned that today, that's
Yes.
going up now, so.
Yes, it went up 38%, so
Right.
that brings, that 38% increase on average brings that 210 up to 289.8. The current owner of a home at that average of 210 at 34.64 mills, our current mill is paying $7,274. If the mill rate goes down just 6 mills to 28.64 times that increased assessment of 289, the tax is going to be $82.99, an increase of $1,025. Again, I don't think that's modest.
Yeah, I didn't
So-
say modest. I said that there's going
You
to be
said
winners,
modest.
there's going to be losers, some will have a modest increase.
Right.
I talked about the style of homes. Each home is going to be evaluated different. So I did not say it's going to be a modest tax increase. In my case, I think I used my own self as an example. I'm going to have a major tax increase.
Right.
So,
And you did acknowledge the challenge, because
Yes.
everybody's goes up, but that's not the main point that I want to make. Some of them may be modest, some of them will be
Yes.
significant.
yes,
But I just want to remind you of a statement that I gave at the special Board of Finance meeting in June of 2024. June meeting was necessary, of course, because the first budget was defeated. And during the statement that I gave, I described a very poignant very poignant incident that occurred at the May budget town meeting, where a gentleman came up
it's not right.
and said, this is going to increase my taxes about $450. I can't afford it.
Yeah.
And it was a very nice moment. And you went over to the edge of the stage and you shook his hand and you held the handshake for a bit. And I thought you exhibited great compassion. And in June, I said to you, don't forget that moment when we're in next year's budget process. So I'm just reminding you again of that moment. Don't forget that.
Yeah.
And I
So-
hope we could do better than a 5 or 6 mil reduction.
Yeah, so let me, I know we're approaching the 7 o'clock hour,
Yeah,
but
I'm done.
Right, let me just explain to further elaborate here, okay? It's gonna come down to what the people can afford and what is, if the budget fails, what is going to be cut. This budget, we'll use the Board of Ed as an example, the 6.99%, which is $4.4 million, that is what's needed just to keep the Board of Ed running the way it is. On the town side, we have contractual obligations, you hear that a lot, we can't change that. We're looking to see what the insurance numbers come in at. We have debt payments we have to make. In the end, I know that sometimes people say, well, here comes the fear-mongering. No, this is the reality today, folks, that we're going to put together and finalize this budget. This Board of Finance all has a voice in that. In the end, we're going to go forward with a referendum. If it fails, there will have to be cuts at that point. There's no other way around it. So what we're trying to do is put together the best appropriate budget. Yes, I did estimate 5 to 6 mils. I think that we would need an 11 to 12 mil reduction to flat tax everybody, or most people. But what that means is significant cuts in this government, both on the Board of Ed side and the town side. We can never get to 11 or 12 mils and run this government effectively without major cuts. All across the board, all the different departments. So that's kind of where we're at. Would we like to get lower than 6 mils? Maybe, to see how this process plays out. But I gave an estimation today, because here's how I see it, folks. I believe in transparency. And a lot of times what happens to me, and I accept this, and I kind of like it, actually. People will watch meetings and they'll say, well, 2 years ago at a town meeting, Mike Frieda said this. I love being under a microscope. I do. But at times that statements are made, government is linear. Things change from meeting to meeting sometimes. The unexpected happens. So to say today between 5 and 6 mils, that's an estimate. Hopefully we can get a little bit better without compromising the services that the people seem to like. And that's kind of where we're at right now. So, thank you.
Yes, I stressed that you did say it was an estimate. For my tax to stay the same, it would have to go down 8.6 mils.
Yeah.
Not 11 or 12.
Right.
But you know, and I acknowledge that you said it was an
Yeah.
estimate, but I was, because the budget workshop situation hasn't been completed, I was a little surprised to even hear an estimate. But like you said, you're trying to be as transparent as possible and give as much information as you can in real time, and I respect that. But I'm not really going to have a chance to address the Board of Finance between now and March, when you're going to come in with your Republican declination sheet, as you always do. So the purpose of me coming up here and mentioning what you said today was just to remind you again of that moment, because we've had 2 significant tax increases. And I just also say, you said if the budget is defeated, services will have to be cut. That was said last year before the May budget referendum. And it was defeated, and the budget was cut, and no services were
The
impacted.
difference this year is the reval, the 37.5% increase from the residential side.
Right.
That changed the game. Now, Tim, one other point, because we got 1 minute left. I learned something this past week. I was at a statewide mayor's meeting, and none of us like reval because it puts this pressure on all the different taxpayers. But what I learned this week is, because of the drop in motor vehicle values all across the state, those municipalities, many of them, most of them, who did not have a reval, their grand list shrunk. So they're in the same position we are, because when the grand list shrinks and less money's coming in this year versus last year, or next year versus this year, that's an inherent tax increase right there. So I learned that because of the drop dramatically of these motor vehicles, a lot of the cities and towns are struggling with grand lists that are declining, and that's another problem.
Yeah, there was an article in the Register about New Haven's,
Yes.
who was not in reval,
Right. Dropping.
having a drop. Otherwise, I thought it was a great speech and very informative and very uplifting for future economic development. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sally.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted a little bit more clarity or understanding here of a possible 6 mil decrease. In the grand list that we just received is an increase of 28.3% after adjustments. Is that right?
Yep.
And a 6 mil decrease is only a 17% decrease. It seems as though, I know it's good to under-promise and over-deliver, but I don't think a 6 mil decrease in this reval year is going to be acceptable to either the taxpayers or anyone on this board. So I certainly hope that that number is a lot larger than 6.
Well, it's going to go back to what we're going to cut. It always goes back to that. So, gave an estimation. This process still has to continue. In the end, and I want to reiterate, reval has changed the game this year. It will end up to be, what are we going to cut if the budget fails? There's no way around it, ladies and gentlemen. None. No way around it.
Well, we make cuts every year, and I'm sure there'll be a few this year. But the positive side is that the motor vehicle taxes will decrease by a slightly larger amount because of the depreciation that's
very
occurred
true.
there.
Yes.
So if they're paying an extra $50 on their house, it's because of the $50. It's the shift in the burden. It's off of autos.
Right.
Okay.
Yep, that's a good point. And during COVID, the values went up dramatically. Now they've dropped significantly. And I'm one of the few at my level that's not complaining about that, because I'm looking to see how the residents can get some kind of advantage from a tax standpoint. And on car taxes, that is a mechanism and a way to achieve that. But a lot of my colleagues who have declining grand lists are complaining about the fact that motor vehicle taxes or motor vehicle is going down, because they have to make that revenue up in the form of a tax increase. Government is one of the most paradoxical models you'll ever see once you're in it. From the outside looking in, it may look easy. It isn't easy. Sometimes we make it look easy, but it's tremendously complicated.
Thank you, Mr. Frieda. Any other comments from the audience?
Well, with regard to motor vehicles, it's not necessarily a tax increase. It's a tax increase on, you're right, another type of asset class. But it's a tax decrease on, that has to be made up.
That's what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
so, okay. Overall taxes depend on the budget. Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. All right, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Second, please.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll recess for 3 minutes to allow everyone to get ready.
Okay, here we go.
Okay, we're going to reconvene for our workshop. As I mentioned earlier, we have 3 departments. If I could have the audience just quiet down just a little bit, Mr. Third Selectman. Stacy, why don't you please get us started?
Hi, good
And
evening.
if you don't mind, just mention what page you're on.
Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name is Stacy Yarborough. I'm the tax collector and the town clerk, so I'm presenting two separate budgets for you. I will start with the town clerk side. And
Page 20?
Page 26.
Yeah.
I have modest increase for, it's a little more than modest. I'm having the biggest increase for the year is going to be absentee balloting, and that's based on the fact that last year the state voted for no excuse balloting, so that will increase the traffic and the business and the costs related to absentee balloting in my town clerk's office. They're still working on how the law is going to shake out, so I can't give you any idea of what the actual finality of what will be, because no one knows.
So the comparison of a year in which we had a national election to a year in which we'll only have municipal elections with absentee ballots, you think it's going to go up?
Absolutely, I do. And I also believe we'll, unfortunately, I think that the state is looking to reduce its own budget. The Secretary of State's office has requested, her budgetary concerns for the new fiscal year, and the governor has already cut that up in his new budget, so you know who's going to end up paying for that, the people of the town of North Haven. So it's unfortunate, but I do believe it's going to really change the way things are done in my office, and not to mention the registrar of voters who have early voting, and that too is being worked on. They'll talk about that, about the excessive number of hours and days, et cetera. They're looking to revamp that at the state level, but no one knows what's going to happen at this point. There's also the upcoming costs related to a new state system with regard to how we report and register a voter system as to registration of voters. That's going to be a new system coming up soon. And this is not in my office a cost, but you'll hear about the possible cost because they're going to be doing new voting tabulators. And while there may say there's no cost, there's always costs. So I'm just worried about the money that won't be coming from the state with all of these really big changes. So that's the vast majority of the change I'm requesting in the town clerk's office. And then moving on to the tax I'm sorry, does anyone have any questions about the town clerk budget?
How is your personnel full-time not increasing? How is it at zero?
My full-time personnel?
Yeah.
She has people coming in that are just starting with the town, they're at the lowest grade. And she had people that were the higher grade leave the department.
Okay.
You know that. You come in my office all the time.
I have seen some new folks there who are also good. They
And you'll find the same thing in the
Highly
tax
qualified.
collector's office too, Michael.
Yes, so moving on to tax collector, if there's no questions for
Yes.
town clerk. On the tax collector's side,
Page 23.
the biggest increase you're seeing is, well, there's office supplies and equipment, but the postage/tax system line item, which strangely enough, just today I did get the estimates from the vendor, and they are once again increasing over 8%. They increased almost 9% last year, almost 7% the prior year. I mean, every year it's up and up and up, as I'm sure you can understand.
Sorry, Stacy, you're referring to the postage?
Yes, that's the line item we pay pretty much everything for the tax collection system, which is called Quality Data Systems, QDS. Any questions with regard to the tax collector's office? I will note that, actually, no, I already covered that, so I don't have anything else to offer unless you have questions.
With respect to office supplies and equipment, and the 50% increase, is there actual equipment involved in that, or just more on the supply side?
Supplies.
Because I'm looking back for both the town clerk and for the tax collector, the actual expenditure for that line item for 23-24 was about $500 to $600.
I'm sorry, or are we looking back at town clerk?
Yeah, for both, actually, because town clerk is increasing by 43%, and tax collector is increasing that line item by 50%, and both of them were only in the $500 to $600 range for the total year.
Thus far, perhaps, but not.
No, she means
For
in
year
prior years,
23,
Stacy.
24.
Prior year.
Yeah,
I
for
don't
the
think that's-
last full completed year, which is 23, 24, it's only been at about
That
$600.
must be incorrect. It's not that's different from what I have, so I'd have to double check those numbers with finance,
Okay.
because I'm always precariously close to my budget on those two office line items.
So, yeah. To date, this year, you spent about 12%, $340.
Okay, I'll check on that. And any other questions on either of my budgets?
It doesn't sound like it, Stacy.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said it doesn't sound like it.
Okay, great,
No.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Your two budgets increased the budget by only $3,000, so we would like you to take over Public Works. Is that
Oh,
possible?
well, you got the two offices who collect about 90% of the revenue of the town, working very hard for the people here. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Stacy. All right, why don't we go back to the top, Jim?
Okay. Here's that. Here it is.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So, as Stacy was starting to say, the early voting definitely has a huge impact on everything that we're looking to do, or what we have to do. During the last early voting that we had for the election, we found out the second day, as we were running it, that we were completely understaffed in what we were doing. We were supposed to have 5 ballot clerks, one for every ballot that we have out there. So when you look at the huge increase in early voting, that's just so that we actually run our elections the way that we think they're going to require us to run them. With the information that we have today, this is what we need to do. You know, we won't be able to utilize, excuse me, utilize our office for same-day registration. That's going to have to be separate. We definitely can't have it downstairs. There's not enough room. So there's going to be some infrastructure that needs to happen over the rec center so that we can have access to the CVRS system while early voting is going on.
So Jim, take me through the manpower. So what happens, so let's say I want to vote early. What do I do here, and why does it cost another $111,000?
Well, because when we did it this time, we had one room downstairs. We had a couple people checking you in, and one person handing out ballots for every 5 even though we have 5 districts. Secretary of State says we have to have 1 ballot clerk per district. So right now we just increased that to 5 people instead of 1.
You mean one person per district, you mean?
One person handing out a ballot per district. I
No, you
can't.
said one ballot, that's what I'm asking.
Yes. Yeah, per district.
Right.
Every voting district is a different ballot, right? So we just increased our manpower by 5. We had a couple tables set up where we're actually having people doing more than one district checking you in. We have to have that separate, right? We used our office for the same-day registration, which we cannot do. It's got to be separate from our office. So that's what we're utilizing our time for. We're actually going to have people doing that. So the whole process is huge compared to what we just went through.
So is this $111,000, is that the cost of the 5 extra people, or is there other costs in addition to that?
Well, that's also includes some infrastructure, some workstation. We need more workstations. It's Alex gave us a price for a color printer. So when we print out the checker books, now they're going to be coded as far as it gets coded through the state. What's early voting, what's absentee, what's same-day registration.
Has the
So-
period lengthened, or is it still the same period of time?
I'm sorry, what? Right now, it's still the same period of time, but they're
What was that,
talking
2
about.
weeks?
Yeah,
2 weeks, yeah.
yeah. And like Stacy said, also, we have a new CVRS computer system coming in. We just got notified this week about the training for that in May. So we have a new computer system. We have new tabulators, which I believe, Mike, you probably got the lease on that coming to your office. So there's going to be extra training on that. And what we were utilizing our office for during early voting now, we're going to have to actually have moderators over at the rec center instead of utilize, we use, both of us and our 2 deputies rotated around and tried to absorb some of the impact. I think we did a pretty good job with it, but we're not going to be able to do that.
Okay.
So,
Any questions?
Well, just an observation. I'd like to thank Jim and Jennifer for what they do. You know, we have seen in Connecticut cities and towns who did not handle some of the elections properly, shall we say. And that's one of the worst things that happen in a municipality, when there's a situation where voter integrity is impugned by a lack of policy or adhering to policies by a city or town. So Lori Jean and I were talking earlier. We always support the registrars and what they need, because they're telling us what they need to stay in compliance with state laws and state guidelines. So Jim and Jen, from my point of view, we support you 1,000%. We thank you for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Anything else for Jim?
thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
Karen?
Gary, you still with the town?
Now and then.
Jeez,
Yeah,
amazing. Okay.
yeah,
All right, well, happy retirement.
I left my walker in the hall.
Okay.
He's going to want an exemption on his house next.
Double check that.
Well, I'm Gary Johns, of course, and you can see that most of my line items on the assessor side and the Board of Assessment Appeals side are pretty much the same as what they've been in the past. The office has gone through extensive changes this year, so we've got a new full-timer that just started in January, and that's largely due to we've taken on the collection of sewer, the sewer use fees. And that, of course, that starts in October, but during that period of October through the hiring of the additional clerk, we had to cover a lot of that with our, our overtime and our extra work for everybody in the office to get that up and running.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that, Karen. Who was collecting the fees before that?
Public Works.
They were, okay.
And so that was a big change over. The other thing that's a big change, of course, we had the revaluation that we were working on, as well as the additional exemptions that we were mandated to put on the permanent and total disabled veterans, where that, if they are determined to be permanent and disabled, they receive the exemption on the entire value of their house. That has a big reduction in what's taxable. I think we're on the order of $4 million worth of value that we've taken off the books because of that program.
6.6.
Off the assessed values. And it's a burden for all the towns. Everybody around the state is complaining about that because it's just been tremendous difference. And now the legislature's up there, they're trying to make some corrections to it, but I don't know how that will work out in the end.
So Gary, just so I understand the employment changes, so I'm just looking at the employment table on page 41. So it's showing a new part-time person. And then no assessor.
Well, I'm the part-timer, I think.
I figured that, but
Tim, I'll shed some light on it.
yeah,
The $98,000 part-time line you see,
yeah,
that basically is a step 2, which is the lowest step for a supervisor. That's an assessor. We parked the dollars over part-time because Gary's there part-time. Eventually, as Gary phases out more and more, someone's going to step into that position. We'll just shift it over to the assessor's line.
that's what I was getting at, that the assessors, that's,
Yeah.
right, okay. But we have another assessor besides yourself, right? I thought you were doing a part-time, you had someone else on staff.
No,
Oh, you don't? I thought
We
you had
have
someone in training.
someone that's in training.
Yeah, okay,
but not certified.
They're not
So
certified.
okay. And then the senior clerk, it's going from 41 to 61?
The senior clerk position, well, there's a senior clerk that was changed to a program admin. Maybe it was in the last budget, or it was this budget. She's the one that's doing the training to become an assessor.
Okay,
So she's stepping up and doing more in Gary's office,
right,
because Gary's there part-time, so we compensate her accordingly.
okay,
We shift someone over actually from the tax office, who is the senior clerk, who was assisting in some of the duties that person was doing, plus was supplementing the fact that we moved the sewer assessment collections from Public Works to Town Hall in the assessor's office, which means we make the deposits quicker, we collect more interest on them, and it's more secure being in Town Hall than someone walking in across the street.
I like that part, actually. Really, all the money should be coming into
Yeah.
town hall, right?
Well, prior to this, we are now connected to the Veolia system. Prior to that, it was kind of an ad hoc
Right,
operation they had, so.
As he collects it now, it goes right into the system.
okay.
Why would the sewer use fees not be collected by the tax collector?
When I came in, it was being done at Public Works.
So
Right, but other towns, it's part of the tax
It was
collector's
in Public
office
Works, so I shifted it back into this building,
to the assessor's office.
yes.
Again, the question is, why not to the tax?
Well, logistically, it was too difficult. We have 2 windows downstairs, and we made a decision back 10 or 11 years ago. This is the way we're going to do it, and that's the way we did it. Rich came aboard, we had a discussion, we wanted to move it out of Public Works, we didn't want the people to walk across the parking lot, so we changed it. And we're adding a position to go into the assessor's office to do it. That's the answer.
Thank you, Mike.
The other issue is on overtime is the upcoming year. Of course, we already have 200 appeals received. So we're going to have to, there's going to be overtime involved with the hearings that they have in March. So that's going to tick that up a little bit more too, that overtime line.
But I'm sorry,
And-
Gary, that's March of this year or next year?
This year.
Okay, but so it doesn't affect your overtime budget for next year?
No, that's true,
Okay,
true,
right.
true. And the same holds true for next year. The Board of Assessment Appeals, normally it's a very low amount that is their salary line, but that's going to increase this year substantially because they're going to be meeting
Yeah.
many days, working later into the night. So it's a challenge for everybody.
Thank you, Gary. Any questions for Gary? Thanks, Gary. All right, Police Chief Glenn, Assistant Chief Tavridis, I'm sorry, I hope I pronounced that right.
So I'd like to thank the Board of Police Commissioners for being here in the most part to show their support for the police department budget. The police commissioners work with the deputy chief and I at least once a month, and they support this budget proposal. Mr. Chair, if it's okay with you, if you approve, I'd like to try to get through the entire operating budget and capital budget requests and then field comments, questions. I think it gets kind of muddied if we break it up otherwise.
We don't allow that.
Fine. So I'd like to start at page 26. It's the beginning of our operating budget proposal for next fiscal year. Starting at the top, usually the most controversial and biggest number line is the personnel full-time line. You can see close to 11% increase in that line, and after I get through the budget, hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions and explain why we are asking for that much of an increase. Next increase is under the supernumerary SRO line. So these are the supernumerary officers who are assigned to the schools. That increase from 360 to 380 just reflects the wage increases. Next is the overtime rate, looking to add approximately $70,000 to our overtime line. And again, this is the same amount of budgeted overtime hours that we anticipate every year. It just includes the wage increases, time and a half, the new wage schedule. Under holidays, this is a contractual obligation. We have X amount of holidays. The officers who work those days receive more money for working those days. So this is what we will be paying them, whether it's budgeted or not. Shift differential is a substantial jump from $22,000 and change to $73,000. This again is a contractual obligation. This was negotiated in the last contract. This is officers who work evening shift and midnight shift. They get a shift differential because those hours are so inconvenient to their personal time, their family time, and it's more difficult to work. So it's common practice to receive shift differential. Advanced degrees, this is just under $2,000, again, contractual. Uniform allowance, this is contractual as well, from $70,000 to $98,000. This was negotiated by the union in the last contract. Doctor's fees, it's only a $3,000 increase, but it's a direct result of the police accountability law that was passed. We subject our officers and staff to psychological exams ongoing, as well as drug testing. Under regional assets and equipment, we have really ramped up our regional efforts along with other efforts. But under this line, from $8,000 to $12,000 is because we are participating more. There's more equipment needs for those regional efforts, but they've been successful for the most part, and something that we're committed to moving forward. On page 27, this is the Animal Control Officer operating budget. There's only one requested increase, and that is personnel full-time. That's a combination of contractual wages as an obligation and moving the Assistant Animal Control Officer from 35 hours a week to 40 hours per week. You may note the next line down, the overtime line, I did not adjust that line at all, even though there are wage increases. I think that 5 extra hours of straight time per week will be a net zero for the town. Moving on to page 38, the capital requests. Looking for 4 patrol vehicles replacements that cost $200,000. The outfit of those 4 vehicle replacements at a cost of $160,000. 1 unmarked vehicle. We have a good-sized fleet of unmarked vehicles, so it's important for us to be able to refresh those as the mileage gets up to 130,000 miles, 140,000 miles. So we're looking for 1 unmarked vehicle next fiscal year. Body armor, this is a cycle, unfortunately. For the budget, this next year is a large order for us, 30 units of body armor for a total cost of $33,000 as of right now, and we don't know what that pricing will do between now and July. The vest used to cost $750, now it costs $1,100 over just a 3-year span. For the 3rd year in a row, we're requesting new firearms. These are handguns for everyday use, sighting systems, holsters, as well as rifles for our specialty groups. And that's at a cost of $110,000. And portable radios, this is something that becomes an ongoing purchase for us. We're out of warranty on our portable radios. They break from time to time, whether it's a foot chase and they fall out of a radio holster and smash, whether it's a software issue. So if we can get into a cycle of replacing a few every year, I think that'd be to our benefit. And that concludes my capital requests.
Chief, are you requesting 4 vehicles, cruisers, or 3?
4 total marked vehicles.
Okay, because we have
We'll
in
make the
parentheses
correction.
3.
We'll
I
make
think,
the correction.
no, he means, but the other vehicles down below, that's what he meant.
I see, so
No,
4
no.
total.
4 marked vehicles, that must be an error
Yeah.
in the
Okay.
report.
We'll
Oh.
correct it. We marked it as 3, but the dollar.
Okay, that
amount's the
answers
same.
why it's 200,000, because I wasn't sure why
Okay,
it was 200.
that's what I was trying to understand. 'cause
Yeah, the
that's a
last
different number. Okay,
few cars that we purchased came in around $48,000 just for the vehicle, and that's going to creep up as well.
And so the light bars, it looks like last year, we must have got 2 vehicles, right? So the light bars were 30,000 per, and now we're saying they're 40,000 per?
Correct, yeah, so to buy a patrol vehicle and completely upfit it with equipment and labor, our last vehicles were around 87,000 total.
Chief, on the operating side, the last thing you mentioned, I must have been trying to make some notes here. Tell me again what the regional assets, equipment, and maintenance is, please?
Sure, this funds our regional SWAT team,
Oh,
regional accident reconstruction team, as well as our regional motor vehicle enforcement team.
and do you want to go into the request for 2 new officers that I saw?
Sure. Before I do that, I'd like to bring up what I'm not doing this evening. I'm not asking for 24 new police officers over the next 4 years. Not looking to add 50% of my staff. I am looking to finalize the request that I made last year. And our staffing model, which I think would be ideal between balancing the needs of our community and keeping with fiscal responsibility, would be adding those 2 police officers. And then we're done. You're not going to see me every year coming back asking for more officers next year, or the year after that, or the year after that. Those 2 additional patrol officers will get us to a staffing model that we'll be able to sustain moving forward for quite some time.
All right, and we last added officers, not last year, right? Did we had 2 the year before? Or was it
Last year, we had 2 half-year.
2 half?
Yeah, I requested 4. It was whittled down to 2 for half-year. So the 2 for this year would be to finalize that request.
Were you able to hire the two?
Yes, because of our latest contracts, we have more people applying than ever before. We no longer have a recruitment or retention issue in North Haven.
No. The two from half a year sometimes just carry over into the base request, so you're not asking for two more. You're asking for the two.
I am asking for two more.
Yes.
You
So
are
the two
asking for
half-year, we already have.
The
They're
two
in the
half
police
year you already have,
academy.
that's got you to 42. And we
Right.
brought you from 40 to 42.
Correct.
Right.
And you want to go from 42 to
It's on
44.
page 42, Mike. He's got the numbers there.
I see, yes.
And the clerk dispatchers, could you talk about those two? They're going from 449 to 5 1/4 roughly.
On page 26,
42, sorry.
Oh, he doesn't probably have.
That's our employment table.
It's the employment table, chief. So this shows 8 clerk dispatchers. Last year, budget was called 449,000. The request is 526.
that must just be wage increases. It's no additional personnel, still the 8 dispatchers.
Is that a
Mr. Monaco,
separate?
do you agree?
But they're going up by $40,000.
I mean, it ties up to the contract. Maybe we increase their hours.
Stay full-timers.
I can verify the number, but when the numbers were put in, it's based on whatever the contract value was for a dispatcher.
So it's
All right.
about a $75,000 increase.
Yeah. I'll verify it, but it's probably an hour thing. They've been
It's
having
10 grand a person.
problems holding on for dispatchers.
Hmm.
They did get it,
Well, that's 10,000 a person, right?
yeah.
Hmm.
I'll verify the
But,
contract.
yeah, maybe we should check that.
17% increase.
They could have been without a contract for a few years also. So we
But that doesn't get picked up here, right?
No.
Well, wait, it would, yeah, it would.
Eventually, it would be.
Yeah, it would, right?
But I'll verify the number for you. I would have just extended that number out based on whatever the contract value was.
Right. But he may be right that, I know we pick up, the late contracts in another line item, but in the employment tables, we probably carry his current salary, right? So he's probably right
Now,
about that.
once a contract settled, we do, but in the previous, it wouldn't have been carried, anything would have been carried, just the old number would have been carried.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Right? So was that
It could be
contract?
just catch up,
Right, yeah,
but I'll verify it for
Okay.
you.
yeah. I'm flush out of questions, but the other board members may have some.
So just to review again, in terms of the increase in patrolmen, so you're asking for 2 more for full year this year, so not half year. Is that right?
correct.
Okay. And last year it was 2 for half year. And I believe the previous 2 years, you
I think he
added,
asked for 2 last year, excuse me, Nancy. We gave him 2 for half year.
So last year I asked for 4 full year. It was knocked down to 4 half year,
Okay.
which was then knocked down again to 2 half year. The previous year, there were no additional officers.
And you're pretty comfortable with, if you get the hires for this year, that'll carry us for quite a while?
We'll be in very good shape. And part of our staffing model, the reason why we want to get up to speed with this number of officers is because we'll never max out our efficiency, but that's our attempt, that's our goal, not only fiscally, but also service to the community. So we participate in a number of different task forces that come up from time to time. Mr. Fried had mentioned a few today. But we participate with the DEA task force, the FBI task force, the South Central SWAT, South Central Accident Reconstruction Team, the motor vehicle enforcement teams, the New Haven County Violent Crime Task Force, Stolen Vehicle Task Force, which is regional, the ATV and Street Takeover Task Force. And we're also involved in a number of programs that a lot of other agencies are not. Domestic violence victim advocates, staffing at our police department. We were the pilot program, and we've benefited from grant funding to extend that further. So anybody with a loved one who's has somebody who's in an abusive relationship, they know the value of that, being able to come to the police department or that victim advocate traveling to a home to help with risk management and make contact right away instead of going to court the next day. We started Handle with Care, another pilot program that we started a few years ago, and now that's expanding to other towns. But the key is, when it comes to efficiency, whether it's technology, regional task force, federal task forces, intelligence sharing, we pursue all of those aggressively, but if we don't have the staff, that intelligence sharing isn't going anywhere. If we don't have the staff, we can't dedicate an investigator to participate in a violent crime task force or auto theft task force. That one officer, when we need that task force, will produce 30 that will come to North Haven. So we're trying to become as efficient as possible, and to your point, that was kind of a long answer, but the short answer is the 2 additional police officers, which will bring us to 44 patrol officers, I believe is a good staffing model for us moving forward for several years.
And at one point, you had a grant that helped to defray some of the costs of the overnight shifts. Is that still something that's active, or is that still a possibility?
Yeah, so right now, the grants that we're managing, one is called the Rural Roads Grant. It's motor vehicle enforcement. The Auto Theft Task Force Grant, which allows us to put on overtime officers in the region. And I'll touch a little more on that as far as what's come out of that just in the first month of it. Violent crime, which is the overnight hours, overtime. The Justice Administration Grant we manage also. Distracted driving, and the Federal Task Force reimbursement when we send investigators there. Just give me a moment to find an email that was sent to me. So just in the first 4 weeks, this is the press conference that Mr. Frieda referred to this morning and in the past. We committed to the ATVs, the Stolen Vehicle Task Force, the street takeovers. A lot of that starts with intelligence sharing and staffing the overtime shifts in an effective way. It's not just throwing officers on the street hoping to catch people. So in the first 4 weeks of doing that, there were 49 stolen cars recovered in New Haven County, 48 arrests, 12 illegal firearms seized, 4 drug arrests, 6 juveniles who had detainers, so they were taken off the streets because of previous crimes they committed, and they were locked up in Bridgeport. And under the street takeovers, again, the first 4 weeks, there were 6 arrests made and 8 stolen cars recovered just for the street takeover aspect of it.
And that's with the current manpower that you have today?
That is. It could be improved because when we're short, even just a few officers, we can't staff those overtime opportunities. And these regional efforts and the task force opportunities are reciprocal. So if we can't send an investigator on overtime, even if we're being reimbursed for the overtime through grant funding, if we can't send somebody to participate, then they're not going to send somebody to North Haven to participate. So it's very important that we have the proper staffing model to do that. This works with other things going on in the background, with officers being deployed to the military. So 1 or 2 not available in North Haven, maybe overseas, long-term injuries, long-term illnesses. But again, an additional 2 patrol officers being approved will put us in a very good spot.
All right, thank you, Chief. Anything further from the members?
The firearms, they're just purchased once every 4 years or once every
Longer than
6
that.
years?
Yeah,
So
so
it says
this-
6 to 12 years here, yeah. That's not something you want to spread out or allocate on in a different way, so that it's not 110,000 every 8 years?
Well, let me reverse that and ask you, if you had an 8-year-old gun, would you want to be in the last year of that spread out and eventually have a 13-year-old gun on your side?
Let me,
No,
ask the
and-
let me ask the question differently. I think maybe what Mike was thinking was that, without affecting the age of the guns that the officers are using, is it possible, like we did with some of the vehicles, to buy a third a year, a third next year, and a third after that?
So it wouldn't be in our best interest. We go out to bid, there's state contract pricing, we go out to bid, and because of the size of the order, we get better pricing. So instead of buying 90 guns all at once, if we bought, 30, 30, and 30, we'd be paying more per gun. We don't want to have separate platforms across the board. Every
Well, that was
few
my other
years,
question.
different models
Right,
come
yeah.
out, so there's
Okay,
operational issues.
that makes sense.
Chief,
And I'm
aren't you
sure
also changing
inflation-
calibers?
I'm sorry?
You were changing calibers? or-
Not this time, no.
And I'm sure inflation raises the price.
Sure.
Yeah.
You've been asking for that for a few years, too.
This is the third year.
Yeah.
Is any state money available for body armor or firearms or anything of that sort?
We could look into it. Past few years, there hasn't been. They used to do a 50% reimbursement for body armor, but it's something that we check every year. So if it's available, certainly use it, but we don't know if it's going to be available.
Okay. And on the labor lines here, it does seem as though we've always misforecast the shift differential. It's running a deficit this year, and that's, that's just something we look to the finance department to make sure that we start with the right number. So I'm glad you have to be honest there in trying to catch up, but,
So if I could just touch on that, when we signed the contract, this current fiscal year's budget was already in place. So it went to referendum, it passed eventually, and that was the number that was approved by the people of North Haven. Then the contract gets signed and ratified, and so we knew that it was going to cost us more, but it was past the point of adjusting the budget.
Yeah. The fire department seems to often say that more regular time in terms of a greater personnel can sometimes reduce the overtime line. Does that have any effect on the overtime line in future budgets?
The police department and fire department have
Different, right.
drastically
Different, right, yeah, different
staffing
scheduling.
models and
Yes.
So,
yeah.
no, we don't have
Okay.
contractual replacements
right.
like they do. No.
Okay. All right. So the 9% increase in overtime is, I guess, at least reflective of the two new hires we received last year. In addition to what the normal wage increase would bring to that line.
So we don't, no, the short answer is no. We don't budget X amount of overtime dollars per officer. If we hire more officers, there's no guarantee that would have a direct impact on our overtime spending. A lot of our spending is, anything from town concerts on the green, which costs us $20,000 a year to safely cross people, to putting out $60,000 in overtime because of an uptick in stolen cars, hoping to get grant reimbursement for maybe 20,000 of it. So it's not as much replacement of officers, it's more for above and beyond the traditional policing model.
Yeah, thanks. My questions are not about an objection, just a greater understanding, that's all. And we are running a little high on the overtime of the current year, which it is what it is, so.
We are, and a big part of that is our dispatchers. We're budgeted for 8 full-time dispatchers. We currently only have 6, so that's 2 positions, 80 hours a week that are being funded on overtime. So they're probably up to about $200,000 in overtime already, just under dispatch. Remember, under the police department budget, it's the umbrella, it's the dispatch. We have clerical staff, we have animal control officers, and then the bulk are police officers. But something like that can really affect our budget. If you take note on page 26 of the part-time personnel, very small percentage used. We're only budgeted for $80,000. That's to fund our part-time dispatchers. Because we're so short with our full-time dispatchers, they're working overtime to take those shifts.
Okay. Lastly, with the animal control, we're no longer, is Hamden still involved in our building? Or is that over?
Yes, they're still involved.
'Cause I
They're
know that
eventually moving.
they were going to,
They're going to build their own building.
yeah,
But right, they're still involved with us now.
they are, okay. All right, well, hopefully they pay a nice little rent. Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, great. Anyone else?
No, I like the way they enforce the Valentine's violations that may occur.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Assistant Chief. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
I'm not sure if I have to adjourn, but we'll adjourn just for the sake of it.
Yeah, that was good. Thanks.
The preceding program is brought to you in part through a grant from the town of North Haven. Watch town meetings or other videos on demand at nhtv.com.